Hey everyone, so there's been a lot of drama with my family because of something that I pulled off at my stepsister's wedding, and I should probably feel bad about it, but honestly, I don't right now. I don't have a problem with upsetting my stepmom and stepsister, but even my father is not talking to me right now, and that's the only issue that I have with the situation. My stepmom, Sally, and my stepsister, Megan, have been a part of my life since I was 17. I'm 31 now, and they are just as bad as they were back then. They never put in an effort to get to know me, and it was made very clear to me that for them, my dad, Sally, and Megan were one unit, and I was just an unwanted outsider. My parents had been divorced since I was 8 years old, and we had a normal relationship until he started dating Sally. But after that, we started seeing less of each other because I did not want to go visit him since I knew that Sally and Megan would be around, and they would make me feel unwelcome even without using harsh words or anything. It was just the way they behaved with me and around me, refusing to speak to me unless my dad was in the room, not acknowledging my existence at all, occasionally whispering whenever I was around just to make me uncomfortable. So I started visiting him less, and I started spending more time with my mom. Then eventually I moved away for work when I was 24 and finally returned 3 years ago to start my own business and to be there for my mom, who had been diagnosed with cancer. My mom's diagnosis brought my dad and me closer together again because they had actually ended their marriage mutually and on good terms, so they had remained friends to raise me. Of course, they had lost touch after I grew up because they didn't have much to talk about. But after her diagnosis, he used to visit her just like all her other friends did, and we would spend Saturday nights as a family having dinner together and chatting. I liked that, and it lasted for a while until my mom passed away earlier this year. Her treatment hadn't been going well anyway, since her diagnosis had come very late, and by then the cancer was already in the advanced stages. So we knew that she was probably not going to make it, and it didn't come as a surprise, and we were obviously upset, but also relieved that she was in a better place now and not hurting anyone. I thought that once again my relationship with my dad was going to deteriorate, but this time he held on to me. We started having dinner every Saturday night, just the two of us. I guess after a while he had sense that I didn't get along with Sally and Megan, so he didn't force me to be around them. Now that I had my own house, since my mom had left hers to me, he could visit me and I wouldn't have to be around his family. He didn't speak about them either unless it was absolutely necessary, and things were going well for a while. But then, a couple of months ago, after Megan's engagement, my dad was having dinner with me one night and he came to me about the problems that he was facing, mostly financial in nature. Apparently, after the pandemic, his business had not been doing too well and he had been struggling to stay afloat. On top of that, Megan and Sally had made absolutely no lifestyle changes to accommodate this, even though they knew that he was not doing well right now. Around the time that Megan got engaged, he had just managed to start saving again, since his business had resumed doing better than it was. So he expected to be doing well again in a couple of months, but unfortunately, Megan wanted a lavish wedding with 200 guests, and both Sally and Megan expected him to pay for it. I was not surprised that this responsibility was my dad's because even though he's not Megan's biological father, he's paid for pretty much everything since he started dating Sally. Her biological father is not in the picture, hasn't been since she was a baby, and they have no contact with him, but still, it felt kind of unfair that such a huge responsibility was suddenly my dad's. And it also felt unfair that she was asking for so much, knowing that my father needed some time to recuperate from his financial condition since he had just taken a huge hit after the pandemic. Anyway, these were just my personal feelings. But my father had already agreed to cover the cost of the wedding. It was pointless to expect anything from Sally because a couple of years after getting married to my dad, she had quit working and had decided to be a stay-at-home mom. So, since he didn't have anybody else to go to, he decided to talk to me about it. And he asked me if I would be willing to cover half the cost of the wedding, just to help him out a bit, because it was going to be pretty expensive and he didn't want to rush headlong into it and blow so much money in one go when his business had just started doing slightly better. He told me that no matter what happened, he will definitely pay me back, and I didn't have to worry about it. And he would even get the legal paperwork done for my peace of mind. All he wanted was for me to help him out for now, and that's it. He even acknowledged the fact that I didn't get along with Sally and Megan. Hadn't seen them in years. And they had never been nice to me, but he was asking this as a favor to him and not them. So that put a different spin on things. And after thinking about it for a while, I decided to agree to help him out. After all, this was my dad that we were talking about here, and I trusted him fully. Besides, the kind of work that I do, I make a good amount of money from it. I don't have a family. I don't intend on starting a family either anytime soon. Basically, I'm single and I had money to spare, so I agreed to help him out. I did receive an invitation to the wedding, and I had no intention of actually attending until my dad convinced me to do so, because I knew that it would be awkward since they don't get along with me and I don't like them much. In the past couple of years, I've had very limited interactions with them, and none of them have been pleasant because it always turns into a competition as to who's doing better in their life, Megan or me, and I'm not interested in that kind of thing. Anyway, when the time came, my dad arranged for me to speak to the people responsible for the catering and the decor, and I made out a check to them directly since my dad was busy with other things. That unfortunately led to a lot of trouble for him because on the day of the wedding, I made sure that all the food was given away to the homeless and none of the 200 guests that Megan had invited got to taste even a bit of it. And I have to say, I did this out of nothing but pure spite and hatred. And I don't feel sorry about it because I had my reasons and I'm going to explain them now. So, like I said, I've maintained my distance from Sally and Megan, but of course I was bound to run into them at the wedding. Megan was busy, obviously, but after the ceremony at the reception, Sally was around here and there. And at one point in time, she came up to me. I was standing with a couple of my cousins whom I recognized, and she came up to us and started chatting about how we were doing, basically attending to us like the rest of the guests. I didn't say anything, but even then, after a while, she started addressing me and started talking to me, and I was reasonably polite, but soon enough, the conversation started taking a different turn, and it made me uncomfortable because she started talking about my love life. She started asking me if I was still single, and then started making disapproving noises when I said I was. She told me that I was in my 30s and I should really start looking for a man because my biological clock is ticking, so I need to get married and start a family. And she was pretending to be genuinely concerned. But I know that this was all an act to make fun of me, and it was really embarrassing. I just stayed quiet though. I didn't want to make a scene, so I was trying my best to keep my mouth shut. But then she crossed the line. She started telling me that I'm turning out to be just like my mom, because she was also mostly concerned about money and her company. And I'm the same way. I only care about making a profit for my company. not about my own life and what I should be doing at my age, which, according to her, is getting married and having babies as soon as possible and then raising them, because that's the only way you can be happy in your life as a woman. I didn't care about her opinion, but I didn't like the fact that she was dragging my mom into this. I knew that she had always been very insecure because my mom was a very successful woman. And yes, she was a bit of a workaholic, and so am I. But that has nothing to do with my decision to remain single for now. But Sally didn't understand this. And at one point, even though I was trying not to say anything, she ended up saying that I should probably start looking for a man as soon as possible because otherwise I run the risk of ending up like my mom, being single when I pass away and having to rely on my ex-husband for company. And then she laughed as if it was some huge joke, even though that was one of the more insensitive things I've ever heard anyone say. Even my cousins were shocked. Nobody thought that someone would be capable of saying a thing like that. And I just couldn't believe it. After having voiced out this horrible thing, she walked away, going over to somebody else to talk to them. I was just left standing there because I couldn't even begin to process what she had just said. But after a couple of minutes, I knew that I was not going to take this lying down. I decided that I had to do something about it. And I did the first thing that popped into my head without caring about any of the consequences. I headed towards the ladies' room and called up the woman responsible for the catering. Without giving a second thought, I told her that there had been a change of plans, and now all the food was supposed to be given away to the homeless. She was kind of confused, but when I made it clear that this was my decision, she told me that I could just instruct the wait staff at the wedding to load the food into their trucks and take it to the nearest shelter. She would have a chat with them and explain things to them, and whatever I had asked for would be done. Because after all, I was the one who had paid for the food. I was the one who had covered the expenses, so as long as she had her money, she couldn't care less about what happened. And I think that's the way it should be. She was quite professional about it, and thankfully, under my guidance and instruction, the staff quickly loaded everything into the trucks and drove away. And then there was absolutely zero food left for the wedding guests. And that's exactly what I had wanted. Along with the trucks, I got into my car too and started driving away because after what had happened, I had no intention of going back to the party. I drove with them to the nearest shelter, almost an hour away, and in the meantime, I started receiving a bunch of phone calls and messages from my dad, demanding an explanation for everything. Since the wedding lunch was supposed to be held in a different room, my dad and Sally hadn't noticed the staff leaving. And at the time that I had left, there was still half an hour to go before lunch was served. My dad had no idea what was going on, so he had no reason to suspect anything. But when he finally realized that the room that lunch was supposed to be served in was completely empty, there was no staff, no trace of a wedding lunch apart from the empty tables and chairs, he decided to call me to ask what was going on. I didn't pick up for a while, and when I finally did, it had already been 3 hours. Obviously, he was very upset with me. He started yelling at me as soon as I picked up, so I had to wait for him to calm down before I explained everything. And I told him that I was not sorry about anything that had happened, that this is exactly what Sally and Megan deserved, and that I refused to feel apologetic for any of this, but my dad didn't care. He told me that he didn't care whether Sally or Megan deserved this, but he knew for a fact that he hadn't done anything to deserve this kind of thing. He told me that it was not Sally nor Megan who had to face embarrassment and humiliation because of what I did, but it had been him who ended up looking like a total fool in front of everyone. Apparently, he had to contact the hotel authorities. and arrange for something, but even they couldn't arrange food for all the guests at such short notice. So he, Sally and Megan, the groom, the groomsmen, and the bridesmaids, everybody had to get to work and start placing orders from the nearest restaurants because, of course, they couldn't let everybody go home hungry. And there was no explanation for what had happened either. So there had been a lot of whispering, and it had been absolutely humiliating for my father to serve a haphazard and hastily arranged lunch to all the 200 guests instead of whatever they had been promised. He sounded very upset, and I actually felt bad for him. But I told him that, regardless of whatever he had faced, I'm not going to feel apologetic. And if he was expecting me to apologize for anything that had happened, then he could forget it. Because of what Sally had said to me, it was just not acceptable. I could tolerate her insulting me, taking digs at me, but getting my mom involved? Yeah, that's simply not going to fly with me, and this is exactly what she deserved. But then my dad told me that my actions had brought him a lot of shame and humiliation, and I could either apologize to everyone for it publicly, or he would cut me off because what I had done was just not okay. He also told me that because of what I did, he had to come clean to Sally and Megan about who had actually paid for all that, since Sally had been about to call the catering lady to give her a piece of her mind, but then he had to explain that I probably had something to do with it because even I was gone. And it was shocking that they had discussed this, but at no point had Sally thought it appropriate to explain what had happened right before I did this, to indicate that I might have left and done this because of her and whatever she had said. Anyway, my dad thinks I should apologize to everyone publicly and basically just issue a statement on social media for everyone to see. I don't agree. I don't think I owe anyone an explanation, and if anything, it should be Sally who should own up to her own mistakes, because regardless of whether I had paid for the wedding or not, whatever she had said was just not acceptable. Even if I hadn't contributed a single dime, even then she couldn't have said something like that, and I stand by it. So right now, my dad and I are at loggerheads over this, and I simply don't know what to do because he's my only surviving parent, and I really don't want to lose him. But I don't see any other way out of this apart from apologizing. And that is something that I won't be able to convince myself to do. I've tolerated a lot of BS from Sally and Megan over the years, but whatever has happened recently really crossed the line, and I can't bring myself to apologize for my reaction. I'm just very confused right now. I don't know how to feel. AITA for ruining my stepsister's wedding after my stepmom insulted me and my mother? Update 1. Hey, thank you so much to everyone who commented. It really means a lot to me. All the support, it's something that I've really needed. I needed it to make up my mind about what I wanted to do, and I've made my decision. I'm not going to apologize for anything that I did. After all, whatever I did, it was only because of what Sally said. She had been completely unfair to me. She always has been. But this was just taking it a little too far. Like people say, she messed with me for no reason, so this was just her karma. Unfortunately, my dad got caught up in the crossfire. But even right now, he seems to be more upset with me as compared to what Sally said to me, who is what put everything into motion in the first place. So really, am I the one who's at fault for this? I don't think so. And that's why I'm not apologizing. If that means that he's not going to talk to me, then that's his loss. Because I've always tried to be a good daughter to him. Even when we were distant, I never allowed myself to hate him. I never thought that he didn't love me. I just believed that we were not in the right circumstances. I never blamed him for the state of our relationship because I knew that he had a family now, and he had to prioritize them as well. It was just my misfortune that I did not get along well with him, but that was not his fault. At least that's what I thought. Now, though, I don't feel the same way anymore because at the end of the day, I was his family too. And he let me down. He just gave up on us. Besides, from whatever interactions we've had in the recent past, I know for a fact that he knew that Sally and Megan cast me aside and never made me part of the family. And that's why I was so uneasy around them and refused to visit them. But he could have visited me. He could have made arrangements to see me more often, but that he never did. I guess he was relieved I was keeping my distance so he could just put it on me instead of acknowledging the fact that even he never worked to keep our relationship intact after his second marriage. Anyway, this is very complex and there's no point in bringing it up now because whatever has happened, we can't go back in the past and undo it. What we can do is work for the future. And for a while, that's exactly what my dad and I were doing. But now, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. He's not speaking to me at all, and I'm sure that unless I apologize publicly, he won't. So I guess that we are in a stalemate right now. There's nothing to do about it. Update 2. So it's been 2 weeks since the incident at the wedding, and I've had absolutely zero contact with my father. It's not like I haven't tried to get through to him. I've tried to call, I've tried to text, but a couple of days back, I found out that I was blocked. Honestly, I saw this coming, but even then I'm kind of disappointed, but whatever. I can't do anything about this now. Anyway, enough about that. Recently, it was not just my father who disappointed me, but I also heard from a couple of my cousins that they thought what I did was totally uncalled for, and these were the very same people who were there and who were literally right beside me when Sally insulted me and my mom and walked away as if nothing had happened. So for them to reach out to me and tell me that what I had done was wrong and that it was unethical, it's insane. Because I thought that they would be on my side here. I've known them since I was a child. They've known me forever, and yet here we are. To be honest, I feel like my dad might have put them up to this, but it's not really his style, so it's anybody's guess. The only thing that I did notice was all the messages that I received. There were around 3 of them and were very weirdly similar. So even if it's not my dad who put them up to this, somebody definitely did. And they decided to go through with it, so I don't know what's really going on here. I'm pretty sure that somebody's trying to guilt trip me into apologizing just to save face. They want me to take accountability and apologize publicly so that the family doesn't end up ruining our own reputation. And it's only me who gets talked about, but not the rest of them. Everyone else gets sympathy and I get gossiped about. Logically, I know for a fact that it would be my father who would stand to gain the most from this, because then at least people could not be questioning him and he would not have to face all the embarrassment by himself. Instead, he would become the subject of sympathy because, of course, who wants to have a daughter like me who's so ungrateful and selfish? But then, like I said, it really doesn't seem like his style to do something like this because it's kind of underhanded. So I don't know. It could be either Sally or Megan, because even Megan has been a part of the family for quite a while, and I don't know how my cousins get along with her. But if they are doing this because of Sally and Megan, I'm seriously disappointed, especially knowing that these people were around me when the whole thing started, and yet they are choosing not to be with me. I mean, I just don't have anything to say anymore about all this. Update 3. Hi, so 2 months have passed since my last date, and like I said, I've barely had any contact with my father. He's blocked me everywhere, but he had unblocked me a couple of weeks ago to let me know that he and Sally were clearing out the house, and he had a lot of stuff that belonged to him, so I could come by and take it away if I wanted to. Otherwise, it would be sold in their garage sale. I decided to skip it because I knew that it would be way too awkward to see him and infuriating to see Sally. Besides, if I had been able to survive so long without any of those things, I probably wouldn't need them that badly. Anyway, after saying that, he blocked me again before I even had the chance to reply. And that was that. But then a couple of days back, he decided to text me again. This time he had messaged me saying that he was really disappointed in how things had turned out, that he had expected better from me, that he had really wanted me to acknowledge and accept my mistake and apologize for it. But instead, 2 months had passed and I had made no such move. Instead, I had just let time pass without making an effort to repair my relationship with him. So, which clearly showed how little I valued him. And now he wanted me to know that my chance to apologize to him and make things right had passed. And now he did not want anything to do with me in the future. I honestly didn't know what to say to that because it was basically him saying that he never wanted to speak to me again. I mean, what do I even say to something like that? Especially when it's coming from my father, somebody who I already have such a complicated relationship with. So I just left it without saying anything, and a couple of days later I saw that I was blocked again. So he was probably waiting for me to say something. But when I didn't, he decided to cut me out once and for all. I won't lie and say that I wasn't hurt or that I wasn't affected by any of that. I definitely was. But then again, what do I even say? That's what I keep coming back to, even though I'm his daughter. In the past many years, the one lesson that I have learned is that the onus is always on me to fix things. I don't know why. I have simply no idea why the responsibility is always mine to put in an effort and make things right. Especially in this case, when I don't even think that I'm that wrong. I honestly feel like a total fool right now for believing that maybe my dad and I could have a normal relationship. I should have given up on that around the same time that I started to realize that right now his priority was his other family, not me. I was never one of those kids who had taken their parents' divorce very hard because for me, they never seemed very unhappy about it. So I learned that it was probably not a very sad thing that they were separating. I learned to deal with it. I learned to live with them separately and have separate lives with them. But I never learned how to adjust to the fact that after my dad got married a second time, I would no longer be his priority. I never thought that it was going to happen. I thought Sally, Megan, my dad, and I were all going to be one unit. But unfortunately, I was not included in that, and my dad never seemed to think that there was anything wrong with it. I should have realized it back then, that for my father, I was just no longer that important, and unfortunately, that realization is hitting me now. I should have never expected anything from him right from the beginning, and then I would have been much happier. But anyway, I've learned my lesson now. I am not going back anymore. Update 4. So it's been a year since my last update. My company is doing very well by God's grace, and of course, because of all the hard work that I have put into it. I'm still living in my mom's house. The only development is that recently my boyfriend moved in with me. We've been dating for the past 5 months, and people might think that it's a bit too soon, but honestly, we think it's the right time. My father and I don't speak anymore, and from what I've heard, he and Sally have sold our old house and moved into an apartment to be closer to Megan and her husband. I felt a little bad when I heard about that because I grew up in that house and my dad just sold it without even talking to me. But anyway, I shouldn't have expected much. Anyway, I'm happy with my life. And that's all that matters now. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.